less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast, episode number, well, that's actually a good question. What episode number is this? Let me look real quick because I've been doing a ton of podcasts recently and I just don't remember. Maybe it doesn't really matter. Let's see. 83, I think. Yeah, episode 83. My name's Jake Green. Thank y'all for joining me today. Got a couple special guests coming on here in a minute, but before we do, if you want to know what is happening around the state of Georgia that the Libertarian Party is doing to spread freedom and liberty, go to lpgeorgia.com. You can get involved in a number of different ways. You can also sign up for our email newsletter called the Liberty Watch, and that details out all of the legislation that is currently being proposed and or implemented in Georgia Congress. I can't tell you how valuable this thing is, especially if you are somebody who likes to call, text, email your reps and let them know what you are in opposition to or what you want them to vote in favor of. The Liberty Watch report is phenomenal. That is Mr. Brian Allen is in charge of that, and he does an incredible job compiling all that information and getting it out and detailing it for us. Yeah. So yeah, if you have questions about the Libertarian Party, go to lpgeorgia.com. If you are outside the state of Georgia, go to lp.org. There you have it. Sorry. Let's see. All right. So today's guests are Jennifer Williams and Gretchen Brocard of You Are the Power. This is Spike Cohen's organization, and they are working to reunite families, parents who have had their children medically kidnapped by the government here in Georgia. It happens way more often than you would think, and many times there is no grounds for the child to be taken away from the parents. In fact, there is very clear lying and corruption involved. And Jennifer Williams has been on the show before. Gretchen has also been on the show before. So without further ado, let's go talk to them. All right, y'all. Jennifer Williams and Gretchen Brocard have joined the podcast. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. Gretchen, you came on recently to talk about Defend the Guard. Can you give us just like a 1-minute update on what's happening with that?
Yeah, actually. So we made it through the first committee, kind of similar to last session. Made it through the first committee. We did not make it out of the rules committee, unfortunately, and it was not without a valiant effort. We have a very solid phone banking crew, and we hammered them pretty hard, but we had a very short notice this time to whip that committee. So we didn't make it out of the rules committee, but it's technically not dead. So we will have some work to do still, though, now between not this time and next session. So see what happens next session.
Nice. I love it. That's a bill that's getting a lot of momentum around the country, which is kind of cool.
It
a lot
really
of
is.
people are noticing it, and it's pretty neat to see. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, Jennifer, you came on the show, I think, for the first time about a year ago, maybe a little more. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of the term medical kidnapping. And that's basically what you've been fighting for, or fighting against for the past year or two, I guess, at this point, maybe longer.
Yeah.
Can you just give a brief description on what medical kidnapping is and what is going on in Georgia?
Sure. So for me, the definition is Parents are bringing their children to a doctor, their pediatrician, being sent to a children's home, a children's hospital. Usually the parents see something going on with the child, a swollen leg. It can be markings that they see, like discoloration marking. All of these kids are weeks to months old, right? 2 months and under. They go, the pediatrician will say, like, yeah, something's going on. Let's send you on to Children's Hospital. You need x-rays. Like, that's the number one thing everyone wants to do, is run x-rays on these kids. Once they get there, they usually find some kind of issue. Could be fractures in the ribs in various stages of healing. Parents are flabbergasted. They're confused. They have no idea. DFACS, which is CPS, is called. Law enforcement's called. All of these cases have to do with a child abuse pediatrician stating non-accidental trauma has happened. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Parents are escorted out of the hospital. DFACS takes custody of the children, usually puts them in foster care despite family being very willing and able to take these kids. They usually go to foster care regardless. And that's kind of, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. It sounds ridiculous, and it almost sounds like, no, there's more to it than that. Like, babies can't just have fractures. So there are a lot of medical conditions that can mimic different symptoms of abuse, these discoloration marks, weak bones. And instead of looking for differential diagnosis, these doctors are claiming non-accidental trauma, like within 2 hours. And it's really horrible.
Yeah, no kidding. And you've been working on a case that's going on right now. I know you can't talk much about it, but can you tell folks what's going on with the case you're currently working on?
Yeah, sure. So one of our families we support is Carrie and Brady Timms. They're from Calhoun, Georgia. And their trial started March 3rd. It took 4 days to get jury selection. The DA called in over 600. They summoned 600 jurors.
What the heck?
Yeah, they really did not want anyone to have heard this case on social media. They actually tried to get it to another county. And thankfully that did not happen. Not another county, like another jurisdiction. They wanted it out of that county, same jurisdiction, but like 3 counties over, in hopes that less people would have heard about it. Thankfully that didn't go. And I think they only ended up hearing less than 100, like going through less than 100 jurors. So all 600 did not get vetted, right? But that's how many that they called in. They selected their jury on day 4, and then trials started that following week. Unfortunately, due to scheduling, a whole week has gone by where there is no trial, being this week. It starts back Monday, March 24th at 9 a.m., Calhoun, Georgia. It's open to the public. If you want to come and support Brady and Carrie, or just see for yourself what's going on, you can wear blue if you would like to, and come there to support them. It's been interesting to say the least. It's still, the state is calling their witnesses. This is the second criminal trial I've been part of. So it's very interesting to see the differences in the judges and the differences in just how they handle things. The defense attorneys, like how they're handling things. Carrie and Brady have an awesome defense team. So anyone's welcome. Okay.
Gretchen, so I didn't know you were involved with You Are the Power until somewhat recently. Can you tell me how you got involved with Spike's organization?
Absolutely. Well, it's really Jennifer's fault. It was listening to this podcast, watching this podcast. I'm already a fan of yours and this podcast. So I was a child advocate. I was a CASA volunteer for 15 years here in Georgia until very recently. And as part of CASA training, you have to have about 12 hours a year of just continuing, I'll call it continuing education. It's really just hours showing that you're staying up on current issues in child advocacy. And so after 15 years, I'm trying to sort of widen my reach as far as the different kinds of training that I can find. And so I was listening to different podcasts and watching different documentaries. And when I saw that you had something called medical kidnapping on your podcast, I was like, what the heck is this? Because as a child advocate for 15 years, I had never heard of medical kidnapping. And so, Jennifer was on, and I guess it was about a year ago. She, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes into the conversation, I was like, how have I never heard of this? This is absolutely something that anyone in child advocacy or, foster parents or anyone should know about. We should know that there is a possibility that children who, parents are accused of abuse, you should know that there could be an underlying medical issue. As a CASA, you have access to all the children's medical records, their psychologicals, and you also have the ability to speak up in court. The judge, if you have a good judge, they actually want to read your report and they want to hear what you have to say, because the only person you work for is that child. So as a CASA, I could not believe that we hadn't heard about this. So I reached out to state level CASA. I was like, have you heard of this? Could we get training on this? Didn't really get much traction there. And I reached out to Jennifer. I said, what's been your experience? How can we help, in our capacity? And unfortunately, she said that there just hasn't been great experiences with CASA. So I wrestled with it for a good couple of months, and I prayed about it. And eventually I reached out to Ryan Ralston and I said, I think I need to get involved in this. So we had probably like an hour-long conversation about it. And the next thing I knew, I was meeting Jennifer and Jonathan and Mandy, and they took me in, and they've been amazing, and they got me caught up on the cases. And I guess that was the beginning of summer last year. So the rest is, we've been working ever since.
Wow. So do either one of y'all have a theory as to why no one's ever heard of this? Because I hadn't heard of it either until last year when Jennifer came on. And so it just seems like it should absolutely have been something that more people know about, considering how much like time, energy, and resources are, spent on kids. Do either one of y'all have a thought on that?
Yeah, from experience, these parents are told to be quiet. I mean, they're told to be quiet by the court. They're told to be quiet by their own attorneys. They're told to be quiet by everyone involved in their case. And it's almost like they do it like for their benefit. Like, just keep your head down, keep quiet, trust the process. I know this is hard. Everything's going to work out. Some will even, therapists and stuff, they probably mean it. A lot are like, I don't know why this is happening to you. I've never seen this before. This is horrible. Just keep your head down and keep going. Just keep trucking. You'll go through the process. And then defense attorneys are like, be quiet about this. You don't say anything to anyone. You don't talk about this. Judges have reprimanded parents for going to social media about this, threatening gag orders, wishing that they legally could put a gag order on these people. Caseworkers stand on they get on the stand. Guardian ad litem's, which is the child's attorney. Your Honor, this family is putting their children at serious risk. They are putting their pictures on the internet. And I mean, they're just telling the world that they've been removed from their care. Like, we have to stop this. So it's like they're terrified. I think for some, Jake, in my experience, a couple of them, they're young or even just naive, and they don't understand this was a medical condition. Like, in their mind, they're like, I didn't abuse my baby. I didn't. I don't know what happened. They're not thinking. No one has told them it could be a medical condition. So for them, they're like, how did my baby get broken bones? I should be quiet about this because I don't know what's going on. That's my experience. I don't know if Gretchen sees anything different, but
I mean, that makes sense for sure. Like, I think the government definitely has a way of coercing you into not speaking out, as much as you probably should about different things that they're doing, and threatening people with gag orders and saying that like putting your kid on social media is some type of abuse seems very extreme, very extreme.
Listen, I heard a judge say she was going to take off her judge hat and she wanted to just talk to the parents, parent to parent. This judge had treated this mother and father like absolute crap for over a year. And all of a sudden she's like, I'm going to talk to you parent to parent. And she talked to them like they were stupid. Like, putting pictures of your kids on the internet is not safe. They can get into the wrong hands. I did a quick search on that woman and found her kids immediately. I'm like, lady, like stop. No one is, they just want you quiet. They do not want people knowing this is happening.
That almost seems in and of itself like a form of admission of guilt, where like if you don't want somebody talking about something, I feel like it's because you feel guilty or embarrassed about it. And either one of those things kind of implies that you have some culpability in what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems like a wild route to take.
But parents are scared. They're scared. So they're like, okay, everyone's telling me to be quiet, because even some of the families we support, it took them years before they went public, and they were terrified. And in fact, for the Timms family, for Brady and Carrie, 2 years had gone by. No indictment, just hanging over their head. They can't have their baby with them. They get supervised visits. They don't know what's going to happen. In the state of Georgia, when it's crimes against with children, you have 4 years to be indicted. So you can just wait for 4 years. And that's what their attorneys wanted them to do. Just wait the 4 years. If you don't get indicted, everything will be fine. They went public with You Are the Power, and it was like a week, 10 days later, they got indicted.
There we go.
So they were punished for going public.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like they're also punishing them just for, I mean, the whole waiting seems like a punishment in and of itself. I mean, that has got to weigh on you as a parent if you're just sitting for up to 4 years waiting to possibly be indicted.
And missing time with your kids.
Yeah.
Bonding time. Because like Jennifer said, these are young babies. This is the most critical time for any, and a pediatrician will tell you this. Like the same people who are, involved in the removal of these children are the same people who will tell you this is one of the most critical times for bonding with these babies, and they have no problem taking them from their parents. I mean, this is literally the definition of whirlwind of emotions, because you have a brand new baby, you find out they have fractures or some sort of hemorrhage, you're trying to process that, and then you have your baby taken from you, and then often your other children taken from you. And then you're facing criminal charges, and then you're separated, not allowed to talk to your spouse. And now you have a juvenile court case and a criminal court case, or this indictment hanging over you. And you have to pay for all of this. And you have no support system. I mean, these parents, you want to talk about strong people? You will not meet stronger people than these parents. You just won't. With everything they have to go through, you just won't meet stronger people.
Yeah, and it's so amazing because some of these parents, Grant Phillips is in Indiana. He went through this. He's now a state organizer for You Are the Power. Tasha Patterson is going through this in Florida, and she's putting a bill in, a second opinion medical bill with her husband, trying to get Patterson's law passed. Jenna Foster, I think she's in Virginia. She went through this. She's now a state organizer for You Are the Power. These parents fight back. I mean, it's hard, and they work hard to get their kids back, but they fight. And when it's done, they fight for other families. They don't just coil up and say, okay, it's over now. They typically fight back and start trying to save this from happening to other families. So it's really awesome to see that.
That is awesome. I mean, it's something you wish you didn't have to see, but it is awesome that people step up and work hard for the right thing.
Look, you want us to be quiet? Okay, well, now I'm a state organizer for this grassroots organization. So there you go. I love it.
I mean, my timeline is always flooded with Spike tweets and You Are the Power tweets. So I think y'all are doing things correctly. It seems y'all are growing substantially over the last few years, which is really cool to watch.
Which is sad, right? Because that's how much government overreach there is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's a weird contradiction that, you want more people involved, but you don't want it to have to be this big.
Absolutely.
So recently there's been some legislation in the works, and Gretchen, Jennifer says that you're the one to talk to about that. So what's been going on?
So there has been some movement in the right direction. And we talk about this all the time on our team. I mean, there's so much more that we need out of this legislation and even the directive that's come down from DFACS, but it's a good start. at the very least, it's an acknowledgement by the system that this issue exists. And it's allowed these parents to at least feel heard and seen in some small way. I mean, they deserve a lot more than this. But so we've got Senator Matt Brass, and this is after a very long time of trying to get his attention. Finally came forward and drafted some legislation. It was SB 259. It's now called Ridge's Law after Bailey Collins, their son Ridge. They're actually, Bailey's father plays golf with Matt Brass. And so all this time, you know, Matt Brass was saying just how Jennifer said, trust the system, go through the process. You know, you just have to, it's going to be hard, but you're just going to have to go through it. Well, you know, a year and a half later, nothing's happening. So finally, Senator Brass puts forward legislation. They decide to call it Ridge's Law. And it says parents have a right to a second opinion. And not only do they have a right to a second opinion, this is second medical opinion, but the juvenile court and DFACS have to acknowledge that second opinion when they're trying to decide, you know, make their recommendations or make their decision on what's going on with these families and children. So it's a first step. It did pass unanimously through the Senate, and it made it through crossover day. And on Wednesday of this week, it passed unanimously through the House Juvenile Judiciary Committee. And at that hearing, it was really powerful because, well, we had two mothers were able to testify in one of the Senate hearings. And then Wednesday, we had several parents to testify. And it was amazing to be there because you could see the faces of all these legislators, the ones who showed up, I'll say, for that hearing. You could see it on their faces. They had no idea this was happening. And you had these legislators sitting there shaking their heads. They couldn't believe it. And at the end of the hearing, we had several that even say, we have a big problem here in Georgia. I had no idea this was happening. We got to do something about this. So we've at least been able to raise awareness. We do, I think, have some allies now in some of these legislators, and we've already started some talks about some additional legislation. Jennifer's husband, Jonathan, was there to testify as well, and we did try to add some additional language to this. We tried to add in the need for, or the requirement for child abuse pediatricians to announce who they are. None of these parents had any idea they were speaking to a child abuse pediatrician. They don't announce who they are. Parents have no idea because, like I was saying before with these parents, how they're just going through all these emotions. When you take your baby in thinking, okay, something's not quite right here because they maybe have a swollen leg or something or a strange marking, and then they have multiple fractures and multiple stages of healing as a parent, you're just like, this is a gut-wrenching thing to find out about your baby. And so you're trying to process that and you're racking your brain trying to think, how could this have happened? You know, did I change a diaper too roughly or did I do this? And now you have a child abuse pediatrician coming in to talk to you, and you have no idea that you're under suspicion of abuse. Who knows what you're going to say because you're trying to rationalize what happened. And so when these pediatricians, or CAPs as we call them for short, when these CAPs are talking to parents, and this whole time they're thinking these parents abuse these kids, their word is what's used for DFACS to remove these children. These parents have a right to know. And so unfortunately, that language did get shot down because they do want to just get this bill pushed through with no challenges. They were very supportive of trying to get at least this pushed through. But we did have a few legislators say, let's work on additional legislation for next session and let's talk about this because they agree that something should be done about that. Parents should not be, you know, is this person a medical professional or are they a law enforcement professional? That's really the question. And so
Yes.
that's what we need to get to the bottom of it. It sounds like they agree that these people are operating more in their law enforcement capacity, and that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost entrapment in a way, like talking to somebody you think is trying to help you, but they're actually investigating you. That seems a little strange when you are there in good faith and trying to do the best for your kid. That seems, I don't know, like a big conflict of interest. If you are the one deciding whether or not this person is going to be charged with something, and you're the one diagnosing whether this kid was abused, like that.
Yeah, and you will be the one sitting under oath at court, testifying against this family.
Yeah,
because sometimes law enforcement isn't even the one to testify. It's just the child abuse pediatrician.
Wow.
And often not even the child abuse pediatrician that was the accusing pediatrician. Sometimes it's another child abuse pediatrician. So
yes, that is with the Alexander's trial. They're sitting in prison right now. I was at their trial last year in Pike County. The law enforcement officer who served them arrest warrants, who wrote up police reports, never entered the courthouse. Child abuse pediatrician was their accuser, and it wasn't even the accusing cap.
Wow.
That's horrible. And people need to understand, we understand a mandated reporter. Like, I understand, and every one of these parents have actually said that. In the beginning, when someone said, hey, I'm a mandated reporter, this doesn't look good. For a couple of parents, that was said to them by the pediatrician. I have to call DFACS. Their very first initial response for all of these parents that this did happen with, I understand, like, no problem. You're worried about my baby. I'm worried about my baby. The truth is going to come out. No big deal. Call whoever you need to. But meanwhile, run tests on my baby. Meanwhile, get blood drawn from my baby. Let's find out what's going on, because I know I didn't abuse them. So let's find out. They're concerned about their actual health. These parents, Jake, are not, every one of these had their children every day with them. Not one had a baby in daycare of the families we support. None of them. They all were the sole care providers. So they know without a doubt someone did not abuse their baby. They're not wondering if it was cousin Louie or the director at the daycare. They know me and my husband had our baby. The occasional grandma or aunt and uncle might hold the baby, but they know that they were responsible for the baby. So it's not a question of who abused. So they don't mind that a mandated reporter has to go through this process, but in their innocent minds, the truth is going to come out because we did not hurt our baby. Obviously, there's a medical condition. There's something scary going on with our baby. And that's the difference between what Gretchen is saying. We want these child abuse pediatricians to walk in and say, hey, I'm a child abuse expert. Someone in this hospital thinks you've abused your child, and I'm here to question you about that. Now, you have a right to an attorney. You don't have to answer questions. Why do parents answer all the questions? Because they're worried about their baby.
Yeah.
So they answer questions.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, it makes the most sense. And especially if you're there and you know you're innocent. Like a lot of the, I mean, this says a friend of mine was accused of something that he didn't do and thought, okay, we'll just go to court. The truth will come out. Like, I'll represent myself because I know I didn't do this. And there's no reason for me to go spend tons of money on a lawyer when, you know, it's very provable that I didn't do it and we'll be all good. Well, he got into the courtroom and the prosecutor and the judge were just lying their asses off and didn't tell the truth one time. And he ended up spending like 9 months in jail for something that he never did. And it kind of reminds me of that in a way where people go in thinking I'm like, I know I'm innocent. So like, I'm just going to cooperate and do whatever they say and then figure, you know, try to figure this out with them, while the whole time they're actually just being prosecuted and lied to, and things are being done behind their backs. And it turns out really poorly for them in the long run. Yeah.
One thing before we move on, I want Gretchen to talk about the DFACS directive. But one example, if anyone's like listening to this, like how could you find yourself in this position? A good example is one of these caps might say, so your baby has multiple fractures. How did this happen? And a parent sitting there like, fractures? I don't know. Have you been in a car accident recently? No, we haven't. Have you fallen with the baby? No. Has anything happened? We have a 3-year-old. I mean, she's sometimes rough. Okay, there was that day that I did actually trip and fall, but the baby didn't hit the ground. Like, they start coming up with things, and that is used against them in court. Parents change story multiple times. Wow. They're literally just trying to, in that moment, okay, how could this have happened? How did this happen? And they're just giving what they know in the moment. Like, it's so sad. It's so sad. And that's why we wanted CAPS to have to introduce themselves. And one day they will, I assure you, if they're still around, which I hope they're not.
And
Yes, they are.
ultimately, like you just said, but I was going to say, ultimately, when we're done with this, I want it to be so expensive from a liability perspective for any hospital to employ or contract a child abuse pediatrician that they just no longer exist, because
Yes.
the redundancy of their position in the first place is expensive from a taxpayer perspective, because we know the Georgia taxpayers are paying for the contract that are paying for these people. But a child abuse pediatrician, there's just absolutely no need for them, because, and we've used this phrase a lot, but when you're a hammer, all you see are nails. These people are completely unnecessary, because if you take a child to a pediatric medical facility like CHOA is one of our worst offenders. The child abuse pediatricians at CHOA are literally destroying families in Georgia. But you take your son or daughter to a medical facility that specializes in children, and you find fractures. Why are you not going to a pediatric orthopedist first, or a pediatric hematologist or endocrinologist and the geneticist? Why is there not a team of people? Okay, when parents voluntarily bring their children to a facility saying, hey, something's not right, we care about our child, will you please look at this baby? Why is the response to immediately bring in a child abuse pediatrician who's had a 3-year fellowship in child abuse? Okay, so you're going to tell me that in 2 hours they can diagnose child abuse and determine who did it? Like, what does that fellowship look like? Can we see, like, are there a law enforcement agent all of a sudden? So it makes no sense. There's no need for them. And it's so expensive, not only financially for the state of Georgia, but for families. Like, we cannot allow this position to even exist. So for now, we will work on legislation where they have to announce themselves. But eventually, I hope that there's no such thing as a child abuse pediatrician.
Yeah, I didn't think of it in that way. That's interesting, because the doctor's already required to report any signs of abuse, correct? And so what that's a redundant, that seems like a redundant position that you don't need.
Myself, our whole team, we all come from a background in child advocacy. The importance of protecting children from actual abuse is not lost on us in any way. That's the foundation. It's what brought us all here in a way, because that's our background, is protecting children from abuse and neglect. So that is not less important to us because we are fighting for parents, their innocence. So if you take these children to a medical facility without a child abuse pediatrician, if there's actual abuse, you're still going to find that. And the same tests you run and the same examinations you do to show if there's a medical underlying differential diagnosis, you still can find the abuse if there's no explanation. If they do a thorough investigation, you can still determine whether abuse occurred or not. But there's so many white flags that are raised when parents are coming together and bringing their kids voluntarily and asking for help and don't have an explanation for what happened. These are things that should tell us we don't need a child abuse pediatrician. We need a medical explanation. But I mean, we could go on for days about how much we don't want child abuse pediatricians to exist, but
yeah, well, it seems like this is a law enforcement meddling in the medical field, and law enforcement has become far more has kind of lost its way, in my opinion, where people have to prove their innocence rather than law enforcement proving their guilt. And this seems exactly what that is, where law enforcement has now gotten in the way of actual medical care and actual science investigating something that, if a kid comes in with broken bones, maybe run some tests and actually do your due diligence to find out what the cause was rather than immediately accusing the parents of something.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it seems like, a few extra hours, couple extra days wouldn't be a problem.
No, not at all. And if you think about it, a child abuse expert, if anyone finds out you were with a child abuse expert with your child, what's the first thing that they're going to think?
Yeah.
That abuse happened. I mean, and I'm seeing that even in the trial that we're at. That's the first thing you're going to think about. Why do you bring your car to a mechanic? Usually there's a problem, right? Sometimes it's maintenance. That's what a pediatrician is for. They're like the maintenance of your child. If you're going to a bone specialist, a hematologist, an endocrinologist, a neurologist, any specialist like that, you're usually thinking, there's a problem. So if anyone finds out you were with an abuse specialist with your baby, everybody immediately is going to be like, oh, well, abuse happened. Obviously, they were with a child abuse specialist. So it's just the name itself is really disgusting to me, because you're just assuming abuse happened, and that's gross.
Yeah, no, that 100%, that makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of like, you hear somebody, a couple went to see a marriage counselor, you immediately think, oh, their marriage is in trouble.
Yes.
Like they're having issues. When maybe they just need to figure some things out. That everything's okay.
Yes. I mean, it's just like you really name the name is in there. And what she said about Hammer looking for nails, listen to me, these people live their life off finding abuse. That's how they pay for their car. That's how they pay for their home. That's how they live. They are not pediatricians that you bring when you think your child has a high fever or a runny nose. You do not see these people for that. You see them when abuse is suspected. Their job is obsolete if they don't find abuse. I mean,
that is such a good way to put that, actually. Like they're paying for their mortgage based on, being able to take your kid away from you. That's interesting.
Yes, and their salary comes from the hospital. Most of them are actual employees of hospitals, although we have found some are not, like Barbara Knox at Wolfson's. She is not an employee of the hospital. She is contracted only through the state. Here in CHOA, it looks like they are paid by the hospital, but we know they also are contracted through the state, through DFACS. They have 4 DFACS liaisons they are proud of that work right there, and they have DFACS in their back pocket. It is no problem for them to get any information they want to or from DFACS. State workers and law enforcement. It's
wow.
I mean, that's ridiculous, right? When you say it like that and you hear it like that, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. It is ridiculous. Well, Jennifer, we're going to have you back on once the Tim's case is wrapped up, so we can hear all about what goes on there and what happened with that. Gretchen, how can the bill isn't signed into law yet, correct?
Not yet. It still has to pass through House floor. We're pretty confident, though, that it will. I mean, every committee it's been on so far has passed unanimously, and I think the same way we didn't know this was an issue, these legislators didn't know, but when they hear about it, they're genuinely pretty shocked, and I think they do want to do something about it. So I have no doubt it's going to pass through the House. And like I said, we'll have more work to do to make this protection for parents stronger, but it's a great start.
Well, Gretchen, talk about the directive real quick. Quick.
Yes. So real fast. So this comes from all the work that Jennifer and Ryan and the team did before I even came on. And then we've been working on this for a very long time, trying to get the attention of the DFACS commissioner, Candace Gross. And I've found, she reads all of her emails. She's been seeing this. She's known about this. But finally, we were able to get her to put forward a directive. It actually came through on Valentine's Day of this year. It's a DFACS directive effective immediately, supposedly, that says all DFACS caseworkers, if they come across a suspected abuse case from a child abuse pediatrician, they have to have a CAP. I know we keep going back and forth, but CAP. They have to have the CAP sign an attestation form that says, I have reviewed all medical records, birth records, medical history, pediatric records, and considered those in determining my diagnosis of non-accidental trauma. And they have to sign that. And if they refuse to sign it, the DFACS caseworker has to document that they refuse to sign that. And so that has come down. We don't believe it's being used yet. We know that there's some caseworkers that have no idea it exists. We know that there's some caseworkers that don't understand that they have to have the doctor sign anything. So it's not being implemented, which we kind of knew would happen. Same with these laws, the directives, the laws, it's a piece of paper unless there's accountability. And that is going to be one of the biggest things that we have to work on, is just accountability. These people have absolutely no accountability to anyone. And that's why it's going to keep happening. So like I said, because there is no accountability, that's why it's a first step. There's a lot more we're going to have to do.
Yeah. But the silver lining of that is somebody is paying attention and trying to at least appease y'all.
It makes me so happy to know that they have seen our name. Like, it just makes me happy. It makes me like this. I'm really excited about it because they've heard us, they know, and they're acknowledging there's a problem. You only put in new rules and policies when you admit there's a problem. And that's huge.
And Candace even told Brian, actually, like, I read all your posts. I've seen all your posts. I've seen all your comments. So they're tracking us. And it's like their attorney, Regina Quick, said, Candace reads all our emails. So I was like, I don't know if you want to admit that, because that means she's ignored a lot of emails from parents and people for a long time. But at the end of the day, you do have to give credit where credit's due. We have broken them down to a point. They're not broken down yet where they need to be, but we've broken them down to a point. And, anybody who's listening to this or watching this, if you want to help, we can power in numbers. That's like literally the name of the organization. You are the power. When we can call and email and protest these people, it makes a difference. And even if it is baby steps, I mean, we've let government get so big, that's what it's going to take is baby steps, but we're doing it together. These parents coming together, advocates coming together, that is why these things are happening.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. And that was going to be my next question. How can people help out?
Yeah, go to yourpower.net, sign up through there. We get your emails. You can sign up just to get information, to know how to help. You can sign up to be part of our official Tiger team, where Jennifer and I are. We're always looking for more advocates. But even if you don't have time to get involved in all the daily things we do, I send out emails for different calls to action. If it's just a matter of, hey, we need you to call this legislator, or hey, can you email this person? Every time these people get a phone call and email, it helps. They start to slowly pay more and more attention. So if you just want to get on our email list and just be in the loop on those things, it makes a huge difference.
Heck yeah. Jennifer, you got any last words before we sign off?
No, just thank you for letting us come on. I really appreciate it. And if DFACS watches our post and reads it, I hope they're listening to this podcast.
I hope
and
so
that they start implementing their policies and rules as hard as they can.
Stop kidnapping children, please.
Well, I very much appreciate the work y'all are doing. And I know that a lot of work goes into it, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And I know that can be exhausting, but just know there are a lot of people who very much support what y'all are doing, and hope y'all keep going. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be it for this episode. Y'all stick around after the credits. We'll chat for a minute. And everybody else out there, thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Free Georgia Podcast.